you will notice that we are working towards establishing an independent and strong judiciary that is responsive to the justice needs of all our people. You will also notice that we are trying to establish a people-centered justice system that enables people to live in a just and inclusive society, in a big dream that the judiciary is trying to realize for the people of this country. To realize this big dream, we need partners, we need collaborators, we need friends, we need people who can encourage us. Therefore, receive our gratitude and appreciation for the support that you have extended to us, that has so far enabled the judiciary to emerge as a key anchor institution that is able to play the role of ensuring national stability and social cohesion in this country. This morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here to start a new journey with regards to our partnership and collaboration. This journey we are embarking on is focused on addressing two key concerns. First, as the Chief Registrar has said, the need to align your support with the priority areas that are championed in our social transformation through access to justice, the vision of the judiciary. Number two, we need to work towards a judiciary partner engagement framework that ensures that our partnership leads to the greatest impact on the justice needs of our people. It is in the best interest of both the judiciary and our distinguished partners that the programs that you support should be those that have the greatest impact in terms of addressing the justice needs of our people. It is in light of this that the judiciary identified priority areas that will be our focus going into the future. We are of the view that it is the programs and interventions targeting these identified priority areas that we need to address and also look at the challenges that face our justice system. It is targeting those programs, looking at those challenges, and seeking the interventions which will contribute to the realization of the dream of putting in place an independent, accessible, efficient, expeditious, cost-effective, and fair justice system. I will briefly highlight some of the key priority areas which we have identified in the blueprint, the social transformation through access to justice, and which we will be asking our partners at this roundtable to contribute to. We are looking at justice for the poor, the marginalized, and the vulnerable, because if there is anyone who needs justice, it is that category of people. We are keen on tackling the great paradox that faces our justice system, which is that those who are in the greatest need of justice are the ones who are excluded from the justice system. I think empirical study has been done and found that about 90% of our people cannot access formal justice system. Our solution to this conundrum is to come up with tailor-made courts and alternative justice systems that are responsive to the justice needs of these vulnerable members of our society. Our key target group, therefore, in our interventions is our children. We had a wonderful interaction with the children in November, culminating with a symposium that brought children from all over the country, and they had their representatives. And the clarion call from that meeting was if we can get this message to all Kenyans that we are the custodians of these children, and whenever we wake up in the morning, we ask ourselves, how are our children? They were speaking in Swahili and they were asking, tujue hali ya watoto. If we can get this message across through the NCAJ, through all the people we work with, to own the agenda for our children, to carry through the implementation of the Children's Act, which was enacted last year in July, then we think we will have targeted a great segment of our society that really needs justice. Our children need to be nurtured, they need to go to school, they need to be provided, and they need to realize their full potential. And the judiciary is a key actor in this. We also aim to set up a safe and secure justice system that efficiently handles children in contact with the law and children in conflict with the law. We are working towards rolling out child-friendly courts around the country and supporting the alternative justice system mechanisms to resolve children matters in a rights-respecting manner. We already have one model children's court in Tononoka, Mombasa County. We also intend to establish a juvenile justice information system to link it up with the CPA-MIS managed by the Directorate of Children to enable appropriate data management in children matters. We also recognize that one cannot realize their full potential if they are subjected to sexual and gender-based violence, including in their homes. We are keen on rolling out the sexual gender-based violence courts in all the hotspots that we have identified. We already have one court in Chanzu, Mombasa County. We are hoping these courts will also deal with the trauma and will have facilities and personnel who can guarantee justice to victims in a manner that is responsive to the needs and also the sensitivities. To ensure access to efficient commercial justice that supports our country's quest for economic development, we are keen to having 100 fully established small claims courts in the country within the next 5 years. The rollout strategy for these courts envisages that we will start from Nairobi and the border towns before we move to the other urban areas. At this juncture, let me express our gratitude as a judiciary to the Kingdom of Netherlands and IDLO that have already expressed their intention to support the rollout of the small claims courts in the border towns. The small claims courts have become very, very popular because of the turnaround period of 60 days when cases are determined, and the easy access to the facility and the procedures that are used in that court. We are also looking to the promotion of alternative dispute resolution. We have embraced the idea that justice does not solely reside in the courts. We are keen on promoting the multi-door approach to dispute resolutions, and we have already operationalized court-annex mediation and alternative justice systems in several court stations. We are keen to scale up these programs across the country. We are also working towards the decongestion of the justice system. noting one of the problems that has hindered the effectiveness of our criminal justice system is the congestion in our prisons and having so many petty offenders in the prison and also in the remand facilities. We are keen on reversing this trend to divert petty offenders from the criminal justice system, and to that end, we intend to establish courts of petty sessions in major urban areas to ease the congestion in the criminal justice sector and operationalize instant traffic fines and support family rehabilitation programs through the community service orders. We are also looking into the expansion of case resolution infrastructure by improving physical access and proximity to justice resources, including legal information, which is critical to ensure that those who have been excluded from the reach of justice can have justice within reach. We believe it is unjust and unequitable for one to travel for more than 100 kilometers to seek justice. I've always given an example of a child who is a victim of defilement, and they have to travel over 100 kilometers to seek services, to get a police station, to get a health center, and even to be processed in the courts. So we want to scale up the provision of NJS suites across the country and also ensure that we have subordinate courts within each constituency and a high court station in each county. We also intend to set up access to legal information centers targeting areas that have been excluded from the justice system and mobile court stations to operate in those areas until we establish the courts, the formal courts. We also intend to set up a specialized court to handle the most complex security and transnational concerns of our day. The foundations have already been established in Chansu and Kahawa to model and locate these courts, and I am so grateful to the British High Commission, to the US Department of Justice, and all the donors who have been supporting us towards this end of how we can effectively deal with serious transnational crimes, counterterrorism, and all those other crimes, and how we can even establish a division of the High Court to deal with these matters. The other areas, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, which we are focusing on is automation of our justice system. The Kenyan Judiciary, as you may be aware, is emerging as a regional leader on leveraging on ICT to enhance efficiency of institutional processes and of delivery of justice. We are owning courts, online courts, virtual courts. We are using e-filing platforms. And we are keen on scaling up our interventions to improve case management processes and enhance service delivery. This will be through the digitization of case files for all judiciary registries, establish a case resolution data system to track cases resolved through court-annexed mediation and AJS as well. Our interventions will also involve scaling up the automation of registry services and all the court services, including all the other support services that we offer, from procurement to budgeting, to ensure that our ICT-based services are user-friendly and avoid the possibility of digital exclusion in the quest to access justice. So we need to support and establish judiciary desk in all Huduma centers and e-filing support centers in all our courts. And for this, I'm happy to say we have been collaborating with the Ministry of ICT to ride on the last mile provision of internet connectivity and to use the Huduma centers which offer government services, because judicial services are also government services. So people who cannot afford the gadgets or cannot afford to go to the cyber cafes can now go to Huduma centers and access judicial services. We also need to support ICT infrastructure development, given that some of our court stations are still not adequately equipped with the ICT equipment. Another area we are focusing on is green justice, noting that climate change is undoubtedly a big concern during this time. We are committed to putting in place a justice system that responds to the principles of environmental sustainability, that looks into the grassroots empowerment and the participatory democracy and social justice that support adaptation and mitigation measures to the climate crisis that is facing the globe. We are therefore seeking support directed towards our green energy initiatives and dream of having a paperless judiciary. We are grateful to UNODC and our donors who have supported our courts to use alternative energy. Solar panels have been installed in some court stations, and I'm informed we are saving a lot of money from electricity that can now be used to other uses in the judiciary. We are also, as a judiciary, hosting the largest gathering of chief justices and other jurists from Africa region in April for the 3rd Chief Justice Symposium on Environment in Africa and the 3rd General Conference of the Africa Judicial Educators Network on Environmental Law, which is called AGINEL. We aim to discuss judicial training interventions in combating the triple planetary crisis. We will be discussing climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution in Africa. We will kindly be inviting you to join and support this symposium to put the Kenyan and African judiciaries at the global climate defense and sustainable land use so that we can be at the front line. Capacity building and staff wellness is also another concern because the stage, the vision, speaks about shared leadership. Everything boils down to leadership. Every judge, every judicial officer, every judiciary staff taking up their responsibility and committing to ensuring there is quality justice and customer experience of our litigants is influenced by having motivated personnel who are empowered and who are responsive to the needs of the people who come to us every day. And in response to this reality, we are keen on putting in place systems that enhance staff wellness, which include setting up regional guidance and counseling centers, physical fitness centers, nursing rooms, and programs to support sensitization on drug and alcohol abuse. We intend to have health talks, retirement, and financial literacy talks, amongst others. We are keen on revamping the judicial education and training by setting up the Kenya Judiciary Academy as a regional center of excellence on judicial education and training. We have already been allocated 55 acres of land in Gong area, which is just but a step towards the realization of this journey. We need support to construct this academy and support the various programs run by the academy. I was sharing with a few colleagues that last Friday I spent the whole morning with a delegation from South Sudan, led by the President of the Court of Appeal, judges of all the courts, including a court they are trying to establish or to deal with gender-based violence in Juba. They are very keen on us, Kenya, training them. There used to be a training run by the Kenya Judiciary Institute, which went up to 2016 but stopped when there was war in Sudan. They are keen to resume that study, trainings, and when I send this training for judges, they were quick to tell me we have to train also their judiciary staff. So we also had a delegation from DR Congo. They want to understand us. They want training on how to deal with corruption and how to set up institutions that can deal with issues of corruption. We are still not yet out of the thick of things in corruption, but I can say at least we have institutions in place. We have the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We have the corruption courts, both at the subordinate level and at the High Court. We have the laws. We are struggling with the implementation. There are those of us in the Africa region who have not yet figured out even how to put the institutions in place, how to put even the registration in place. So they are looking at Kenya to learn from us. And we are therefore keen to pursue these opportunities that are geared towards enhancing the knowledge within us and within the region, to enhance our skills and competencies of our judges, judicial officers, and judicial staff through learning from our academy, and to explore also how we can twin with other established judiciaries so that we can have scholarships and exchange programs for our people to learn more. And what is very keen to us is also how we can get value for the money, which we call optimal resource utilization and absorption. We are keen to strengthen the financial management within the judiciary, working towards having in place an optimal system for resource mobilization, utilization, and absorption. One of the steps we have taken is setting up a resource mobilization unit to coordinate our resource mobilization efforts. This new office needs capacity building, and we welcome partnership in this area. Because we are judges, we do not know how to write good proposals. We may not know how to write good reports. So we felt it is necessary for us to establish a unit within our finance department that deals with resource mobilization, grant writing, monitoring and evaluation of the programs, where we can have very sharp program officers monitoring the programs. And this is one area where we'll be needing technical support to support that unit. In addition, we are working towards developing a work plan and budgeting toolkit that will help us revamp our budgeting and planning processes. We are also keen on developing tailor-made internal auditor software that will help in entrenching prudent use of resources and accountability. And for you, our partners, we want to deepen this partnership. So we want to enhance the coordination and collaboration within the justice chain to tackle the systemic barriers to access to justice, which are contributors to inefficiencies in service delivery. So we have revamped the operations of the National Council on the Administration of Justice, NCJ, and the court user committees as forums for coordinated pursuit of solutions to problems that hinder optimal performance and effectiveness in our system. We are all one chain, and if there is any weakness in the whole chain link, all of us suffer. We plan to go a step further by seeking support towards the enhancement of information and data sharing between the justice sector agencies through the development of an integrated justice sector information sharing platform so that everybody knows what it is that we are doing. We also want to know what the DPP is doing, what the police is doing, what the probation is doing, how the prisons are doing. We had a meeting with the PSs the other day, and they agreed to give us monthly reports on what is happening in the prisons so that that can trigger every judge, every judicial officers to know what we need, what interventions we need to put in place to continuously decongest our prisons. We are also very keen on leadership and governance by establishing an accountable and transparent judiciary that can deliver high-quality justice. We have already made performance measurement a key tool for ensuring that all judges, judicial officers, and judiciary staff can account for their time at work. We have managed to succeed in doing this, which we have done in the last 5 cycles, and now it is customary for every judge, judicial officer, or judicial staff to always fill in a form every day to say what it is that they have done. You have been at work between 8 and 5. What have you done? How many witnesses have you had? How many rulings have you delivered? How are you dealing with the backlog? And in that form, it indicates the cases that are pending and the cases that are being filed. So going into the future, we seek support in strengthening this system by getting some technical capacity on data management and on monitoring and evaluation. To ensure we tackle concerns around corruption and unethical conduct, we have established the Office of the Judiciary Ombudsperson within my office. We are keen on enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness by developing an online reporting system that will enable easy reporting and feedback to complaints. We are also keen on developing the judiciary's anti-corruption strategy that will guide our preventive approaches to combating the prevalence of corruption and unethical practices within the institution. We hope to build public confidence and legitimacy in the judiciary, which is pegged basically on dissemination of information and public engagement. To this end, we will be keen on strengthening our information and public relations by setting up a judiciary press studio, customer care, call centers, and conducting periodic people-centered justice service. I will also talk about electoral justice. We all know the stability of any nation and the resilience of any democracy, and indeed, the fate of the success of any country will largely be determined by having the faith in the courts to competently and fairly determine disputes that arise from the electoral processes. It is in this context that we are determined to continue enhancing our capacity and effectiveness in electoral disputes adjudication. I'm grateful for your support, our partners, who supported and held us together when we prepared the processes ahead of the 2022 general elections. Given that our electoral preparations and dropped cycles approach, we are soon embarking on the preparations for the 2027. This requires support to the Judiciary Committee on Elections to conduct a debrief workshops for the courts on the 2022 elections, so that we can learn from the lessons of the 2022 cycle and even 2017. And also look at the legislation and other regulatory frameworks that is required to be enacted to strengthen the whole electoral regime. We hope to avoid the last-minute amendments of the law that was the case of 2022. And we are trying to see how those laws can be tightened also to avoid last-minute invocation of the courts, which led to orders being issued very close to the elections. We also need to support the Judiciary Committee on Elections to pursue legal and regulatory reforms well ahead of the next cycle's elections. The other big event we are working on now is our strategic plan, because our current strategic plan comes to an end this year. We are looking at how we make the STARGE blueprint into a 10-year development plan. We are working towards transforming the STARGE vision into a strategic blueprint that will guide the judiciary for the next 10 years. For this, we will need partners and support towards this work that includes undertaking a comprehensive justice needs survey and a robust internal and external stakeholder engagement across all the courts. We are working with the Hague Institute of Innovation in Law, who have done some exceptional people-centered justice work across Africa and the world. I urge you to continue supporting the judiciary directly through this institute to ensure that our blueprint inspires the entire justice sector to adopt a people-centered programming approach. We are investing in data and evidence to support decision-making, negotiating for additional resources also from the national government, cultivating the potential political goodwill that is necessary to support policy and law reform, and also to deepen our partnership with friends and allies to scale up these game-changing initiatives that have seen to have substantial positive effect to access to justice. The STARGE development team that is chaired by the Chief of Staff with the guidance of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary and the entire Office of the Chief Justice and Deputy Chief Justice will continue to engage with you and your teams to support this process. And in conclusion, so that we can have our breakfasts, we are grateful that you have chosen to walk this journey of institutional building with the judiciary. Today's roundtable should serve as a green light that the judiciary welcomes enhanced collaboration and partnership with all the development partners represented here today and those who have given their apologies. Please join us in this work towards realization of outcomes that will ensure that the judiciary optimally plays its role, not only in guaranteeing national stability, but also establishing a just and conclusive society. And with these remarks, I now invite you and all of us to have an open conversation about these and other priorities that I have shared with you, so that we can harmonize our approaches to ensure that we support an inclusive and empowering justice sector for the Kenya and for the region that we all serve. Thank you very much, and God bless you. I hope we can enjoy some breakfasts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Justice, for setting the tone for this morning's discussions point on what the judiciary is doing, what we're focusing on, what our priorities are, and where we're going. We're supposed to go into the plenary session whereby we'll be looking at identifying areas of alignment with our strategic partners programs. But before we do that, I was just going to ask the Chief of Staff Rose to just remind us of what STAJ is all about, social transformation through access to justice. So Rose, I'll just give you very few minutes to remind us of what that is, and as we discuss, we will all have a common understanding on what we want to do. Rose, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Justice. Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Registrar. Mine is just to really recap on the STAJ framework and to trace the development of the STAJ vision very briefly, so that as we engage in the open conversation, we can appreciate the people-centered nature or the people-centeredness of the STAJ vision. Thank you, Honorable Chief Justice, for guiding us on ensuring that we prepare a concept which is on your table ahead of the conversation. And this concept actually has, under each STAJ priority outcome, various elements that need to be aligned. So it's very, very people-centered, meaning that it is written with outcomes that touch the people and the broader elements of our society at heart. And so as we have the conversation, we will be noting the areas of partner alignment so that we can work very, very closely with you on your priorities and our priorities, and fusing the two together so that we can all make sure that we are expanding the impact of the resources that we have. So please feel free to refer to the concept on the table. And on to slide 1, we've had judiciary that has been in progressive transformation since 2010, the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And social transformation through access to justice vision is a continuation of that transformation. The JTF, onto slide 3, the Judiciary Transformation Framework, which was the first transformation framework after the Constitution, and the Constitution completely rearranged and realigned the institution of the judiciary, laid the foundation for judiciary transformation, but with intent or with focus on institution building and capacity enhancement. And this was important because post-2010, the institution of the judiciary became overhauled by the Constitution and reconstituted. So the JTF did an excellent job at making sure that we focused on institution building and capacity enhancement. And the core focus areas were infrastructure, institutional culture, staffing, training, and technology. Elements which continue to form the basis of our priority even today. And we are building block by block, so iterating. After the JTF, so after the first 4 years of the JTF blueprint, the SJT, which is Sustaining Judiciary Transformation, picked up on the gains of the JTF and continued to build on the successes of the JTF. However, the focus of SJT was to enhance service delivery to the people. So institutional reforms, and then enhancing and expanding those aspects of service delivery to ensure speed and quality. There were a lot of pending cases in the judiciary, and so the judiciary realigned its systems and registries to ensure that those cases were not in the justice system for very long. And this was realized through improved work methods, operationalization of development systems, and enhanced accountability. The social transformation through access to justice has its foundations on the Constitution of Kenya 2010. These are the images you will probably remember on the day that the Constitution of Kenya was promulgated on August 28, 2010. And you will see that the Sturge blueprint actually mirrors an image of the original constitution. And you will also see the image that has continued to give us hope actually brings together people from all cadres, children, the elderly, men, women, young, old, celebrating the promise of the Constitution to the people of Kenya. And that promise of the Constitution to the people of Kenya is really founded on elements that center the people and supported by institutions. Meaning that the most marginalized in our society actually can access justice, and that through the constitutional promise, there is hope to reap the benefits of a system that values social justice. And that justice is then designed to serve all as opposed to a few, and that institutions at all levels are designed to be effective, accountable, and inclusive. And therefore, we overcome the problems of cost, complexity, lack of language skills, remoteness, discrimination. And you will see back to the previous slide that there is a real challenge and there's a real risk when you center institutions as opposed to people, that justice becomes too high to reach, that the barriers actually become critical hindrances to accessing justice. However, when everybody is considered, when a justice system is all-inclusive, then the people can own justice and also understand to render justice. Because Sturge goes to the atom of justice, and the atom of justice is the individual, it's the community, it's the family, it's our connections as human beings, and then the collectivity of that means that it is a justice system. Justice happens where it is owned and where it is held as a responsibility, as opposed to being elevated to a platform that sort of dishes justice downwards. Justice is inherent in all of us, and that is actually made very clear by the constitution reaffirmation that we, the people of Kenya, then, it lays out its promises. And so, the Constitution of Kenya is a beacon for social justice, and it lays out all these aspects in its preambular paragraphs across the entire fabric of its provisions, and culminates in Article 10. And the judiciary is actually charged with the responsibility of protecting and upholding the Constitution. And the Constitution itself is a tool of justice, meaning that everything that is done or given under the Constitution needs to be upheld. And so those aspects are the social foundations of Sturge. And so the transformation element in perspective, next slide, really shows us where the work began. And the work began with the institution to be able to hold that accountable elements that are required by the Constitution through the JTF and the SJT. And now Sturge actually focuses on expanding the doorways of justice at the very margins, at the very bottom, to make sure that the institutional reforms that are still being continued through Sturge, but also the rights, justice, the atoms, the molecules of justice at the very bottom are also expanded through many, many considerations. And that means that at the end of the day, the entire prism of our justice chain will be complete once Sturge has been fully realized. So that is essentially what Sturge aims to do. And that's why Sturge places a lot of emphasis on systems and mechanisms that actually transmit, justice to all, to most, and those elements are, special small claims courts, courts of petty sessions, specialized SGBV courts, where trauma can be where courts can be trauma sensitive, where courts can actually reach the micro and small and medium enterprises, and many others. So Sturge aims to tackle informal, systemic, and formal barriers to access to justice. It also aims to simplify formal and informal access to justice processes, and intends to improve public participation in justice processes by making legal information readily available. It is true that the scales cannot balance if access to legal information and access to formal or informal justice resolution mechanisms don't balance. So if we have an illiberal access to legal information system, it is very difficult then to support access to justice in the way that needs to be supported. So we are also working very closely with the Law Society and with young advocates to make sure that we can liberate the access to justice, access to legal information element to realize broader justice for the majority. And so, independence, impartiality, availability, accessibility, affordability, timeliness, and effectiveness are all considerations of STAJ. And luckily, the foundations were laid in the JTF and the SJT, and now are being percolated lower and lower to the people. So these are the strategic principles of STAJ, and the cooperative dialogue and deepened partnerships is a core element of this roundtable meeting today. And moving forward to the STAJ strategic objectives, those you will find in the concept. There are 5, and we are reporting exceptional progress and exceptional outcomes on each of them, and we look towards aligning these strategic objectives to all our interventions. Now, STAJ is a people-centered justice framework. The OECD and the United Nations affirmed about 2 years ago that only 10% of all legal needs are resolved through the formal justice system. In 2017, the Kenyan Judiciary, in collaboration with the World Bank, performed a very comprehensive justice needs survey. It was the first of its kind on this side of Africa, and what that study showed us is that only 10% of our population actually access the formal justice system. And so STAJ looks to move from that 10% to 100%, and to have a justice system that is inclusive, that is responsive to the justice needs of the people. But we need to know what those justice needs are. And that's why we need to keep investing in data and to keep asking and checking with the people what those justice needs are. And just to summarize what this satisfaction survey reported, is that only 10% of the people with disputes go to courts. 18% go to the police, 22% go to chiefs and other executive administrative structures. Of course, the 18% and the 22% may actually end up coming to the courts, but as a primary response mechanism, these are the places where these go. But also on average per year, Kenyans generate about 7 million complex legal problems. And so you can see our society is heavily burdened by legal complexities, and about 7 million of those in the crime, land, and family, particularly those 3 bulks, and also the civil and commercial justice sectors make the bulk of all legal problems. But incidentally, about 20 million Kenyans are excluded because of many, many barriers from the formal justice system, and that is what that study reported. And so the people-centeredness of STAJ is to make sure that by the end of 3, 5, 9, 10 years, these 20 million Kenyans can actually come back or be accommodated by the formal, informal, parallel justice sectors, because we also recognize the changing tides of our justice system, that AJS, ADR, mediation, specialized courts are also avenues to make access to justice possible for our people. And so STAJ, as an approach, is the calibrating approach to justice system reforms towards people-centered design and delivery of justice services. And so what are the characteristics of, and this is back to that slide, the previous slide, you can see, not this one, the next one. This was a study conducted by OECD in conjunction with the United Nations on people-centered justice systems. And you can see the design elements of it merging with the delivery elements of it. And so as we prepare the STAG framework, we are also very keen to ask ourselves, how are we designing this system? And are we designing the system with delivery mechanisms in mind? And so you'll see that in the design, we have to ask about accessibility. How accessible are dispute resolution mechanisms? Are we having sensitive use of ICT? Yes. How? Through Huduma centers. We are now making sure that people in informal settlements or in highly populated urban and peri-urban areas can walk into an existing government facility and access a judicial registry from a Huduma center. So that is what it means to have sensitive use of ICT. We are looking at a range of services along the continuum of justice services and strategic deployment of these resources. And that's why we are saying, let us align our approaches so that we can have strategic alignment and make sure that we are doing a lot with the little resources that we have. Prevention, proactiveness, timeliness. This is where the entire spectrum of legal services. How are we diagnosing problems? How are we supporting families to resolve disputes before they happen? And so we are, drawing a lot of inspiration from this model because it was the result of a scientific approach to making sure that justice systems are very people-centered. So we are drawing, and you can see at the heart of people-centered justice are individuals, families, communities, SMEs. So at the heart, you can see small claims courts, you can see alternative justice systems, you can see RRIs in the family division, you can see individuals, trauma-responsive courts, SGBV courts because of the scourge in our society. And then, we are then mapping of legal needs. So justice needs survey, continuous justice needs surveys. Political or service environment, the engagement by the judiciary with other arms of government and the gains that we are reporting today. We need that cohesive environment for law reform, for policy reform. And this we are seeing the passing of the Children's Act, an act of political negotiation, and establishment of courts of petty sessions, establishment of specialized CT courts across the country to meet the needs of present-day justice needs. And then the socioeconomic geographic environment. How far are litigants traveling to access courts? Establishment of mobile courts, setting up of Ukumbi, this AJS Ukumbi suites across the country, but also deploying ICT through mobile phones, through SSD codes, making sure that we can enhance e-filing in Mombasa, in Nairobi, in Kisumu, in Eldoret, and other places, using new material to expand the reach of our justice system, formal and informal. So next slide is the characteristics of STAG, a clear and stated purpose of justice systems, ongoing coordinated research and data to build and maintain a sound evidence base, effective and cost-efficient strategies. So we are not looking at the strategies that cost the most. We are looking at the strategies that use the least resources for the most impact. Systems established to monitor fair outcomes, investment in determining legal justice needs of the population, and co-designing legal and justice services between providers and potential users. A justice system excludes the people when you only focus on building systems from the perspective of the provider. But if you bring in the perspective of the users, so court users committees, and being very keen on court users committees, then you change that because you're designing a system that actually responds to the users as well. So STAG is really about expanding the doorways of justice, and the investments that STAG calls for are investments. The green or yellow investments are on the design side of things, and the orange or red investments are on the delivery side of things. So on the design side of things, evidence-based decision planning, what are we planning? What are we doing? Where are the justice needs? For instance, we have a great need to ensure that commercial justice in our border towns is supported, because that's where trade is happening a lot. And hence, the idea to set up small claims courts across border towns. That will enhance relations across borders, but it will also make sure that we are supporting trade and uplifting the lives of people along those boundaries. But also responsive and just, so on the investment, on the design element, innovation, learning and measurements, Kenya Judiciary Academy, other elements of learning, training, support, shared leadership, the idea that whatever system you have, whatever responsibility you have, you feel responsible to deliver that initiative to conclusion without supervision. And this has been a game-changing principle by the Chief Justice in the Judiciary, that everybody feels responsible for the parts they are driving. The person who's manning the Huduma Center in Isili feels responsible to make sure that Kenyans are served properly. And service delivery through the customer care desks has absolutely changed across our courts. And we know this because we've conducted customer satisfaction surveys in the last 12 months, and we have seen about a 40% spike in satisfaction because of this deploying the principle of shared leadership. Equality and inclusion, expanding dispute resolution options, AJS, mediation, legal information, public legal education, pre- and post-resolution support, specialized courts, and broader court systems all fall into this category. And then strategic deployment of services. With a finite workforce, where are the judges most needed? And the Chief Justice has employed a twinning system where a judge may be based in Embu, but with circuits to Meru to ease pressure in that court. So it's about really rethinking, with finite resources, how do you deploy those resources for the greatest good? And the partnerships that we have, how do we ensure that we maximize plead to for the maximum benefits? And that's why we are looking at the European Union's proposed program on instant traffic fines, and saying, let us match that with courts of petty sessions. Because then, if we liberalize and revolutionize instant traffic fines, then at least we have specialized courts to make sure that those cases do not lull in the justice system. So it's about thinking about what are your priorities and where are your programs going to have the most impact, and matching that. Or considering where does the judiciary want to have the most impact, and then pooling those resources and consolidating them for the most value. And then, of course, on the delivery side of things, responsive and access justice, standardized services, structured bar-bench relations, investment in CUCs, outcome focus and fairness. So not just outcome focus, but also we want to measure fairness. How is our justice system also dispensing justice? Determining legal needs. What are the legal needs so that we can know where to invest the most? And of course, proactive outreach, problem-solving courts. We are keen to have problem-solving courts, so that the idea is not just to have a judgment. It could be channeling the court through the dispute through mediation, channeling it through arbitration, channeling it through alternative justice systems. And we are looking at making sure that the system is robust enough to also employ ADR. So, Excellencies, Honorable Chief Justice, that is the gist of STARJ, and I hope that it is clear now what that people-centeredness or that people-centered element is about. And with that, I hope we can better support the interaction that we are going to have this morning. Thank you, Honorable Chief Justice.
Thank you very much, Rose. That brings us to the end of the presentations. We'll be going into the plenary session.